Grant, we all see life through different filters, and our filters can affect our mental health so much. Can you talk to us about that and what we need to be aware of?
Yeah, our emotional health or our mental health is really based a great deal on our past, because if you have a lot of negative events happen to you in your past that Kathy was describing earlier, of course, she was describing it changes the lens through which you look at reality. And you see, when we're describing this to people, in other words, how your baggage fills. And so baggage fills with wounding events, like Kathy was describing earlier, like being bullied or being treated wrongly. Mm-hmm. But what's most important is how you interpreted that event, because you can have two people, like two children, experience the exact same event and have totally different conclusions. And the easiest example is from the Bible, that when the 12 spies were sent into Canaan, they all had the identical experience, but two came back with a completely different conclusion than the other 10. And it was because they saw Canaan through the lenses that they had accumulated through all the time they spent in the wilderness, feeling like insignificant losers, were the Caleb and Joshua. Yeah, the 10. But Caleb and Joshua, their experience with God just allowed them to see things so differently. So in the course of all of our lives, when we have painful, wounding events, we start to believe lies about ourselves that, I'm a loser, bad things will always happen, I'm not worthy of love, all these things. And so that affects our perspective on life, and it has an enormous impact on our ability to be happy or joyful.
You know, it's so interesting, too, when you speak about the fact that not everyone reacts the same way, that we respond to things differently, even though we've seen the same event. And moving on from that, and how we approach and help people, like Kathy, like guilt and shame and regrets are like the big three that we never really talk about until we are bursting at our emotional seams. But what are the warning signs, and why do we avoid dealing with these things so much?
Well, no one likes to have the spotlight on them. So that's why we avoid it. But, we need to be aware that there's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt, or true guilt, is when you've done something wrong and you need to repent and correct your behavior. Where shame is an interpretation that you've done something wrong, but it's more a reflection on not what you did, but who you are. And so it becomes an identity thing, and needing to repair the identity as opposed to just repent for what you have done. And so people will struggle with that, and they'll walk around. It's almost when some people picture shame, sometimes they feel like it's inside them and they're totally rotten to the core. Other times they'll picture it like they're wearing a shroud, and it's just a really heavy covering. And when you take that to the Lord and either ask him to wash it off or hand it over, that suddenly you find the person you're praying with standing upright and feeling light and free and refreshed, and no longer carrying the weight of all this false condemnation that no one is supposed to be carrying. We're supposed to be handing that off, repenting and forgiving and moving on.
There's an easy way to separate guilt and shame. Just a little expression that we use when we teach on this is that guilt, or true guilt, like Kathy says, is you sense that I made a mistake, I can correct that. But shame is I am a mistake and there's nothing I can do about it.
Wow.
Okay, so there's so much I'd like to talk about right now, but if I'm put myself in the viewer's seat, I'm thinking a whole bunch of different things, from physical problems to emotional to spiritual. If I was to come and sit with you and say to you, how do I get well? I would like each of you to give me 2 suggestions. We don't have time for more. I know there's a whole thing, and we could be talking about anything, but just let God's Spirit guide you. Kathy, if I was to come and say, how do I become emotionally well? What would be the first 2 things you would tell? And then I'm going to ask Grant the same question.
The place where I usually start is asking God if I'm believing any lies about him or myself.
Wow.
And rather than me doing a whole lot of soul searching, ask the one who knows.
Yeah.
Because he knows what needs to be dealt with first. And so ask him, and then ask him who you need to forgive, whether it's other people or yourself, and then go from there. You know, you forgive them and you handle and you decide that I'm not going to believe these lies, and you repent for believing them and break them off and hand them over and ask Jesus what he wants you to know. And that's a very, very simple place to begin. Is Jesus, what lies am I believing about you? What lies am I believing about God? Who do I need to forgive, repent, and hand it over?
Well, Grant, I'm going to change your question, okay? I know you were going to have your two things. I'm thinking about what
I was
Kathy...
all ready for that one.
Yeah, forget it. Okay, because I just have a sense that God's Spirit is saying we need to talk about something else. What Kathy has said is so key.
Yes.
How do I pray into that? Can you guys talk to us about that? Because saying, okay, I got to do this, but how do I pray? And what do I ask God to do? Because there's a whole spiritual battle going on as well. People might not believe it, but I know that it's a reality. And I just want to give some extra time to this right now.
Well, the way I would approach it, and we need to get Kathy's because she's a prayer minister as well, is that I would ask Jesus, why do I react the way I do? In other words, or ask Jesus to show you what are the reactions or habits that I have that I don't want anymore. But usually a person already knows that. And ask Jesus, why do I behave this way? Why do I react that way? And where did it start? And then what lies have I been believing about myself or you that has made me react that way when things happen in front of me? That's where I would start.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing that I was just saying. You know, we are asking the one who knows what the source is of the problem. And you know, you may get a name flash through your head, you maybe get a sudden memory, you may get something, and just pay attention to those very minute thoughts, because those are very often from the Lord and we just haven't identified them. We just think, oh, it's our thought. But pay attention to those minute thoughts and then ask Jesus, who do you need to forgive? Because and then you forgive for what happened and for how it made you feel, because it's at the feeling level where the lies sit. You know, I feel worthless. I feel unloved. I don't feel good enough. I'm unacceptable. And then you say, I refuse to accept these lies. I break them off. They are no longer going to have any part of my life. I forgive the person who did it. And I'm handing those feelings of worthlessness and being unloved to Jesus. And picture yourself actually handing over, Jesus, I'm giving to you all of my pain, all of the hurt, all of the feeling of being worthless. I'm handing that to you. And picture yourself handing that over and then asking Jesus, what do you want me to know? What do you have for me in exchange? Because the whole thing about the cross is exchange, sin for life. And ask him for what he has for you in exchange, and write it down so you don't forget.
You know, I really like how you said it's at the feeling level where the lies sit. Like, it's so true. As always, we could go on forever. You guys are just a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and help for people. And it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I know we're going to have you back. So thank you so much for being with us this morning, you two.
Great to be with you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you, Grant and Kathy.